Cosmonaut Quickie!
So I saw Ant-Man the other day, and I have already forgotten about it. I didn't really go into this movie with any big expectations, but I was still a little underwhelmed. Here's the thing, superhero sequels can go one of two ways. You can have something like Thor 2 and Iron Man 2, which are boring and don't offer any new ideas. Then you can have sequels like Thor Ragnarok or Winter Soldier, which are way different than the first one, and are actually better than the first one. Sequels that build upon the first movie with original new ideas. Now I was hoping with how good Ragnarok was, that maybe Marvel isn't going to make the pointless sequels anymore. But here we are. This movie plays it really safe. This is another Marvel movie that you probably won't remember by next year. Held up only by the fact that people are still riding the Infinity War hype train and they'll probably go see anything that has Marvel on it. This movie doesn't really offer any new concepts or information for other installments to build off of. I mean, I guess if there's anything, there's the existence of the quantum realm, but that was something that we saw in the last movie. Scott already knows how to go in and out of the quantum realm anyway, so I don't really see why that was the main point of this movie. So basically, this movie isn't really that necessary at all. Now, if you ask me, in my personal opinion, which isn't really worth much, this movie should have been combined with the first movie to make an actual good Ant-Man movie. I don't think anybody really wants an Ant-Man 2, even if Ant-Man 1 is really good. I actually like Ant-Man in the comics, but I've always liked him as part of a larger Marvel universe, as a member of the Avengers or something like that. I don't have a big desire to see him on his own in a standalone movie. Half the shit in both of these movies are entirely unnecessary. I don't need to see how Scott learns karate. I don't need to see him fight Falcon. I don't really need anything in the first movie, if we're being honest. Plus, there's a lot of padding in this movie too. Scott breaking into an elementary school, the whole subplot about the dumb side characters and their business. This movie was cute for the first half, but then it got kind of tedious. I realized that I was only really having fun because I was in a full theater and everybody was just kind of, enjoying themselves and in the moment. But if I was watching this movie by myself, I don't really think I would care about it at all. Story threads in this movie just kind of pop up to make the movie longer. Like there's multiple things happening, but only for the reason of extending the film. Character motivations change like the tide, most notably with Lawrence Fishburne's character, who's probably the dumbest person in the entire movie. There are numerous plot holes, which normally don't bother me in superhero movies, but in this they really get on my nerves because they're just little things that didn't even need to be said, but create plot holes by being said. Like for instance, Scott says that turning into Giant Man makes him really tired, it kind of drains his energy. He says that after he turned into Giant Man in Civil War, he slept for 3 days straight. Except he didn't. He didn't do that. We saw that he didn't do that. Also in this movie he turns big a couple times and he doesn't need to rest afterwards. Like if he didn't even say that, I wouldn't think anything of it. But he said it and I can't stop thinking about it now. Also, this is really nitpicky, but it's something that bothers me for basically no reason. All of the science kind of got on my nerves. For instance, we know that when Scott shrinks down to Ant-Man's size, he has the proportional strength that he had when he was regular sized, right? Wouldn't that mean that when things grow, they would also have the proportional strength of when they were smaller? Like in this movie, they have a car that can shrink, right? But the car still goes at the same speed of a regular car. So if the car is going like 40 miles per hour, for instance, and it's shrunk down to 10% of its size, then its speed should go down to 10% of that. It should be like 4 miles per hour. So technically to go at the same speed, you'd have to go like 400 miles per hour? I mean, my math might be off, I'm not a scientist, but you get my point. The longer the movie goes on, the more you start thinking, hey, wait a minute, how is any of this even possible? And when you think that in a superhero movie, you know something's wrong. Plus, the overall plot of this movie is ridiculously silly. Like, it's really, really dumb. If you don't want any spoilers for this movie at all, you can skip to this point. So go ahead, this is your last warning. Here we go. So in this movie, Hank wants to get his wife out of the quantum realm, the original Wasp, Janet Van Dyne. She's been floating around there for 30 years. They say that when you go subatomic, you just shrink infinitely, like you keep going smaller and smaller and smaller until, you're nothing, basically. Except now she's kind of like this wise ghost, and then when they find her, she has a sword and new clothes. Where did you get those things? How can you get new items if you're floating around and shrinking infinitely? They kind of throw that idea out the window and they change it to, oh, well, she just lives there now. She wasn't shrinking infinitely, maybe she was just, hanging out. But whatever. So the main villain is basically like Tracer from Overwatch, and she keeps phasing in and out of reality. She wants to take Janet Van Dyne and drain her of her quantum power, because then it will heal her. We as an audience are just left to believe that this is possible, that this is just the story, and I'm like, fine, okay, whatever. This isn't where I got upset. So anyway, Lawrence Fishburne betrays the group because he doesn't like Hank Pym. So he wants to help the Ghost Lady capture Janet and drain her magic powers. The thing is, they don't really have any grounds to know that this is possible. Again, it sounds really dumb because it is kind of dumb. So anyway, at the very last second of the movie, Lawrence Fishburne decides that murdering Janet is probably a bad idea. And it's not like he has a moment of clarity where he realizes, wait, what we're doing is wrong. No, he just runs into a scene and he's like, wait a minute, maybe we shouldn't kill her because she's a scientist and maybe she can come up with a thing that can help you. And it's like, no shit, you idiot. You've been devoted to this concept for so long, but you're just now realizing that it's a stupid idea. So then when Janet comes out of the Phantom Zone, she's just like, oh, don't worry, my child, I will heal you. And then she touches her forehead and she heals her of her Tracer disease. And it was the laziest shit I've ever seen in my life. Instead of coming up with a real resolution to this problem, they just magic it away. It's all just so stupid. The only things I really liked in this movie were the post-credit scenes. Now the first one shows everybody getting dusted by Thanos except for Scott Lang. And this is pretty good because you can kinda see it coming, but you don't know how it's gonna happen. But what really got me was the last post-credit scene. And here's the thing, everybody told me this scene was gonna be stupid, but I actually liked it a lot. Like, it's one of my favorite post-credit scenes in these movies. It starts off with a shot of a TV with the state of emergency broadcast. It is the only time in any one of these Marvel movies where I was actually chilled to the bone. Like, I was very uncomfortable, and I liked it. The idea of this world reacting to such a dire event really got to me. Then it's followed up by a giant ant playing the drums. And this came across as a very effective bit of black humor, and I just really enjoyed it. Except the thing is, I realized when I left the theater that my favorite part of this movie wasn't really the movie, it was the thing that had to do with another movie. I only really watched this movie to watch the post-credit scene. And then I realized that this movie doesn't really matter. You don't really need to go see it if you don't want to. Oh, but I will mention real quick that the Stan Lee cameo in this movie was one of my favorite Stan Lee cameos, by far. Anyway, like I said, this movie's just kind of whatever. It does have some good jokes, but it goes on way too long. I don't know why these Marvel movies really want to hit that 2-hour mark. All of them don't need to be that long, but whatever. Anyway, 5 out of 10, you don't need to watch this one if you don't want to.